and welcome to My Baking Journey, a podcast for bakers where you get to hear from some of the great minds in the baking industry. My name is Haf.
And my name is Rachel. I'm a baker. I know what it's like to be baking all day alone in my kitchen, experiencing the frustrations and struggles with no one else to guide or support me through it.
And I'm not a baker, but I've witnessed all the ups and downs that come with this industry and where it's hard to get a little bit of extra help.
So if you're looking for advice, tips, and amazing insight from various experienced bakers, you've come to the right place.
So let's give you a little insight into what's in store for you this week.
I was actually applying to dentistry. I wasn't in it yet, but I had taken my DAT and everything. And I was sitting in class and I was just like, I just don't think I want to do this. And I felt kind of lost because I had quit hockey the year previously. I didn't have anything I was passionate about. So I was just kind of floating around and I was like, I don't think I really like school either. So I was watching an episode of Cake Boss and I'm like, I could do that. We're very much perfectionists. So we always want to get better. We always want to improve our processes and our recipes. So there's something to that. I think that part of it, that perfectionism and that hearing critiques and learning from them has been part of our success because we're constantly growing. But where it can get dangerous is when you start listening to people who don't have your best interests at heart, who don't understand what you're doing, who maybe your business isn't just for them. And then you can get a little lost. Neither one of us ever thought we'd open up a bakery. I used to say if I won the lottery, I'd open up one, but that was just like off the cuff. Like I didn't actually ever think that it would ever happen. And then freelancing, well, I started helping Jen with Jenna Rae Cakes, which we thought would always be a kind of a one-woman show. We had no clue that it would grow into something that would support us both. But a couple of weeks in, we realized that we were onto something and we joined forces, I think 6 weeks in and never looked back. That for me is still the highlight of my career, I think. Like it was just, I was like, oh my God, like she knows who I am.
Hey everyone. This week, we are really excited to head to Winnipeg in Canada to speak with two very well-known twin sisters, Jenna and Ashley of Jenna Rae Cakes. This is quite a story because what you see today of their amazing company has so much behind it to get it to where it is. Jenna is the baker, Ashley is the designer. The beauty about this pairing meant that Jenna always had Ashley's back when it came to an outside mind to help in marketing and design and presentation of Jenna's amazing creations. But it wasn't always this way. Jenna spent years working in a commercial kitchen through the night to bake as she couldn't bake at home and then going off to do her day job in between. Ashley had her own career in graphic design, but she could see what Jenna was making and she could see a gap in the market of how to then present this to the public to get Jenna off the ground. But it wasn't always planned this way. I mean, it never is, right? But look at them now. Food Network cake judges, numerous TV and magazine feature appearances, 3 shops, a best-selling recipe book. It's amazing. I can't wait for you to hear their story. So let's jump right in with Jenna Rae Cakes. Now, this is great because you two, I have to say, you are not the first superstar twin female bakers that we've interviewed in our podcast, believe it or not.
Oh, who else? There's more of us?
There is. You are part of a truly elite group of people here. We were really looking forward to this because we'd had another call with a couple of other bakers, and you'll find out when we release our season who they are. But it was just so funny when we were putting the research together on who we were interviewing, and we just thought to ourselves, oh, hang on a minute. We've got 2 sets of blonde twins running a bakery brand, and their stories are very different. So I'm really excited to talk to you both, and as is Rachel. And I think we should really just get into it because there is, fortunately for us, quite a lot of information about you two out there on the internet. Of course, you're very well known. You've been on television, you've got a book, you've been on podcasts, which is also a really great source of research for us. And I just love that you have gone into this business and building this brand with barely a clue of what you were doing to begin with, it sounds. And I think this is a great starting point for us to get into just before that phase, because one thing we really like to do on this podcast is I like to figure out a bit more about who you are and what drives you, what motivates you, what keeps you both going as best friends and sisters. And I'd love to be able to go back a little bit earlier and just give us a bit of an indication about the type of upbringing that you had. Where did you get your inspiration and drive from? Where did you get that desire to do things from? And finally, was something like running your own business something you always wanted to do or completely out of the blue?
Well, I think barely a clue is being generous. We didn't even have a semblance of a clue, I don't think, when we started. But growing up, I know we watched our parents work so hard. So I think our work ethic comes from that, our drive, our motivation, everything comes from what we saw growing up. And in terms of baking, we loved baking in the kitchens with our granny and our baba. And we'd always just be in the kitchens with them, either like cooking and baking. And it just lit something within us. And it was always at holidays and making memories as a family. So it was just always held such a sweet spot in our hearts. But neither one of us ever thought we'd open up a bakery. I used to say if I won the lottery, I'd open up one, but that was just like off the cuff. Like I didn't actually ever think that it would ever happen.
Ashley, do you have the same similar memories as Jenna in that regard?
Yeah, I think working hard at something was never something we thought about. It's just something we've witnessed every day with our dad and our mom. So we've always had 3 jobs growing up, going to school, working long hours. Just, we loved it. We loved working hard. We loved, I don't know, creating things with my own hands. That's always been my passion. I've always loved art from a very young age. And I realized in grade 8 that you could actually have a career in art. I'm in advertising and design. So that got me really excited. And I stuck with all my art courses in high school and lit a fire under me. I had no ambitions to start a business, no ambitions to be an entrepreneur. I don't think that word even existed when we were in high school and college. It was very much focused on working for an agency, working in advertising, that kind of thing. But I have a very like feminine design style. And I remember one of my teachers saying, you just have to stop doing that. You have to like make an ad for toothpaste and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. That's not where my passion is. So I'm like, I'll figure out a way to get clients who are looking for this certain style. So this was like 2009. Wow, I'm old. A long time ago. So I got a job working at an agency and then a wedding magazine and then freelancing while I started helping Jen with Jenna Rae Cakes, which we thought would always be a kind of a one-woman show. We had no clue that it would grow into something that would support us both. But a couple of weeks in, we realized that we were onto something and we joined forces, I think 6 weeks in and never looked back.
I mean, this story is absolutely amazing. I just want to go back just a little bit because it was roughly, was it in about 2010 or was it before that when you had that light bulb moment, Jenna, where you were watching Cake Boss and you saw one of the cakes on and thought, I can do that. And you're in the middle of dental school. So absolutely nothing to do with cakes. Probably you wouldn't necessarily put the two together. Can you take us back to that moment and how that then motivated you to go on to making cakes?
It was pretty crazy. Like I had grown up playing hockey. That was like my thing. That's what I was passionate about. If anybody asked what I did, who I was, I'm like, I'm a goalie. That's me. That's my whole personality. And then, so I played in university and I was actually applying to dentistry. I wasn't in it yet, but I had taken my DAT and everything. And I was sitting in class and I was just like, I just don't think I want to do this. And I felt kind of lost because I had quit hockey the year previously. I didn't have anything I was passionate about. So I was just kind of floating around and I was like, I don't think I really like school either. So I was watching an episode of Cake Boss and I'm like, I could do that. That doesn't look too hard. Obviously it was, but I went to the store that day. I got everything I needed. I got my fondant. I think I used a butter knife to put the buttercream on and I bought like a tub of buttercream. Like it was very basic, but I was so excited about it. And I made my first cake and I'm like, wow, this was amazing. So I had made like buttercream cakes in the past, but like very few and far between. This is my first fondant cake. And it just lit something inside of me. I'm like, this is what I meant to do. And I was like, no matter what, this is what I'm doing. I think I had one class left to graduate university. And I just left and never looked back. So I was...
Wow, you're a bit like Mark Zuckerberg kind of thing, right? Like one class away from finishing Harvard.
Was he one class away too? Yeah, we're in the same boat.
What's interesting here is that for the two of you as twins and best friends and helping each other in this business, actually, you had that defined path in your head, like from grade 8, which I have to ask for our English listeners. They're probably not going to know how old you are in grade 8. Can you tell us?
In grade 8, you would be...
Where would that?
14.
13, 14?
13.
Yeah.
Okay. So really, from going back to 13, you had this idea of, okay, I have a feeling of where I can make money doing this kind of creative thing.
Yeah.
But for you, Jenna, it's not a case for that. Someone's pushed you down the path of dentistry.
whether it's yourself or someone else, and then you've all of a sudden flipped like that to be able to focus on something else and run with it, which is really cool because it's such a difference between the two of you as twins. But what I love about it is that while you're diverging in your earlier years, you then just come right back together enjoying, because you're saying within a couple of weeks, you figured out you were onto something. So what was that indication that you were getting within the first few weeks of starting this that you thought, okay, we've got an idea here, we should run with it?
Well, after I had made my first funnel cake, I was just making cakes for anyone who would possibly take one. I didn't make a penny until we opened our bakery. So that was 4 years later.
And that's a really long time, Jenna. I just want to jump in and go, you've left dental school and then you've gone into cakes and you're working for 4 years. Now, 4 years is a long time.
It's a long time.
I think we've only been going with Olba for 3 years.
3 years, yeah.
And I think that's a long time. So 4 years of just not making any income. And during this time, Jenna, you were working during the night and then working during the day as a server. So probably making enough money to buy ingredients and keep going and paying the rent. But something keeps you going through this. And that's what I'm really curious about, because you must have had lots of moments where you just thought, why am I doing this? What's going on? And probably turned around to Ashley, who's going down her own creative endeavor, probably earning more income, and thinking, why am I doing this?
Barely, yeah.
Yeah, it was a grind for sure, because I was still in university. I was still hadn't quite dropped out yet. And then I was working my serving job at night and then going to my rented kitchens after hours, after I realized that baking from home, our apartment when we lived together, was illegal here. So so the government gave me a call and I had to get that legitimized within a week. But that was great because it pushed me to be like, okay, this is a business. I have to legitimize it. So I just did that for, I guess 4 years, which sounds insane.
So you're taking equipment to a kitchen that you rent at night.
Including a mixer.
Yeah.
Including a mixer. You're just lugging this stuff to a kitchen that's closed, and you go in the middle of the night and you rent.
Yeah.
Till what? Just 1, 2 in the morning? Or
I had to be out at 7 a.m.
Okay. And you do that, 5 days a week or something? Just to...
Yeah, it depended on how many cake orders I had.
Right.
But it was definitely a couple days a week. Yeah.
Okay. So a few days a week, you're giving up on sleep.
Yeah.
You go do this. And you have to leave the kitchen and carry everything out. You can't leave anything there, right?
No, I can only leave the cakes in the fridge. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And you kept that up for how many years?
4-ish.
Wow.
I guess I had the idea to open the bakery. I don't even know when it was, but there was a very precise moment. I got home from work. I was packing up all my stuff. And I looked at my bed and I was so tired. And I started crying. I'm like, I just want to go to sleep. I was so exhausted. And that moment, I'm like, okay, I either have to I can't think of a word or a phrase that doesn't swear, but I have to either do this or
it's okay.
I have to do this or I have to give it up and just keep going with school or go back to school and get my degree and whatever. And I was like, well, there's obviously no other option. This is what I meant to do. And there was just no other option for me. So I told Ash and she was like, yeah, that's a great idea. Winnipeg needs a bakery that has your design aesthetic. She knew that there was nothing like what I was doing out there. And she's so supportive. And I was scared to tell my parents. I didn't tell them for a while because I didn't want to worry them. My mom's a chronic worrier. Having 4 kids will do that too. I have 2 and I get it. But yeah, and it was just never really an option not to, I guess, for me. I'm impulsive, which I think works well, because if I had really thought it out and be you have no baking experience, you have no business experience, what are you doing? But there was no other option for me.
And Ashley, during this time, you were working in the wedding industry. So did that give you an insight into that there was a gap in the market and that where Jenna's Cakes could actually fit in?
Yeah, definitely. I was so excited when she was starting to take it seriously, because then I knew that I could ask her to make a cake for a shoot and I knew that it would be executed in the way that I wanted it to be. And I remember forcing her to put macarons on the menu because we had no macarons in the city, at least in really fun colors and fun flavors, although we were far away from figuring out that. But I was very excited to watch her build something that was a bit more on trend and exciting for the city, something that hadn't been done before in the city. I was all for it. I never really thought that I'd be part of it more than doing the logo and the website and the photography. And I was really honing my skills at the magazine with publication design, obviously, but also photography and styling. So that kind of set me up well to kind of transition over and help build the brand when it came to that.
That's amazing. It's so cool because it's like everything's in-house. You've got the advertising, the marketing, you've got I guess maybe the only thing you don't have is the budget, right? Like the finances to get you going, but you have to start somewhere and you're funding it through whatever means you have at that initial time. So Ashley, is it your husband who joins?
Yes.
Okay. So your husband joins in. So all of a sudden now you're up to 3 employees fairly quickly.
Well, it happened a bit different than that.
Okay. Oh, please tell us. Yeah, enlighten us.
So it was Jenna to start, and then she hired, I think, one person to help with front of house. And then I came on a couple of weeks later.
It was a friend who randomly helped out sometimes.
And then I came on about 6 weeks later. And so it was me and Jen for a very long time. And we hired some front of house employees too, kind of friends who would come in a couple times a week to help us out. So they were very long days. And then our younger sister, Chelsea, she was on a sabbatical from school. She's now a speech pathologist, but she came on. So it was the 3 of us working 17-hour days in that kitchen, trying to keep up.
A tiny kitchen.
Yeah. And then my husband, Trevor, was in between school and getting a new career. So he was going to become an advertising art teacher. So he was done with school and he was waiting to see kind of what jobs became available because they're pretty sparse. So we were like, why don't you come work for the bakery for a couple months in between? You're great with customer service. He's very social, very friendly. So he worked up front and it was supposed to be temporary, and he just fit in so well with it, and he saw the potential and the growth opportunities, and he decided to stay after some convincing. And so the 3 of us have been running it ever since.
Amazing. Rachel, I wonder, like, a lot of our baker listeners are probably sitting here on the fence of, do I take the plunge to, because here you can legally operate out of your house. As long as you're checked and certified, it's no problem. But there is that point where obviously you're tired of staring at your own kitchen where you bake all day and then you make dinner and then you clean and repeat 10 times a day, right?
Yeah.
So there's that point where you do have to switch over and say to yourself, do I take the plunge and go do this? Obviously for you, the decision was forced upon you when the government comes calling and says you've got to go become legit. But those first few weeks of taking on the unit and effectively having to mature as a business very quickly, how were you handling that? Like, what was going on? Were you relying on a lot of people for information and help, or was it just a question of day by day, let's just do this, see what happens?
We couldn't even think about the next week at that point. We were just so overwhelmed with work. And by work, it was just getting the baked goods out for the cooler for the next day. Like, we would sell out and people would get mad at us. And it was just, it was crazy. We could never think about, okay, like, what's next for us? What do we want to do next month? Or should we have a special next week or something like that? Like, we had no time we were like heads down baking. That's all we had time, like, for 16 hours a day. So eventually at the point where we hired enough help to free us up a tiny bit, then that's when we were able to look forward a little bit. But for the first, I would say at least year or two, it was just like heads down, grinding away.
That's a long time as well.
For the longest time, we were working out of Jenna's initial like handwritten recipe pages in her book. It took us quite a while to get switched over and get it online. Sorry, my cat's moving. My
also
computer's
scaling up those recipes as well, because you probably got recipes that can make 24 cupcakes, not like 400.
Exactly. Yeah. There was a big learning curve.
Yeah. How many ingredients do I need? And like, what quantities, what kind of mixes am I going to need? What kind of oven? These are all big learning curves that if you're starting off from scratch, that you would have to be doing on the fly as well. Like, where do I source the best eggs? Where do I, all these things going around your head just to make sure that you're ready for the next day. And I'm just wondering, how did you cope with that pressure? Because that is quite relentless, because it's like, I have to have cakes at the bakery the next day. I have to have something to display.
I'm glad that we have the kind of ability to handle stress that we do, because it takes a lot to shake us. We just keep going and keep working and keep our heads down and know we can figure something out. We don't get super discouraged very easily, but I'm glad we didn't know what we were in for because there was just so much pressure, especially having the daily case and then also taking custom orders, being part of people's celebrations and weddings and having those stakes right on top of it too. And then trying to keep your customers happy. And then reading the reviews. Like, there was just so many things swirling around us at all times, but we had a strong relationship and we knew what we wanted to do. We were pretty steadfast in that. we took in a lot of feedback and criticism and kind of sifted through it and knew like what was helpful and what wasn't. I'm not saying any of this is easy. This was very hard.
Yeah, I had a couple mental breakdowns during reading some reviews at the first time. Yeah.
Oh, I can only imagine just dealing with the negativity if you're not used to it. And I feel for you because I see responses when people post on our social media, and Rachel's really good about this. She's like, take a breather.
Yeah.
Go walk around the house
Yeah.
before you comment, before you say anything, or just leave it.
Exactly.
That's like me. I'm like typing a response and Ashley don't.
You have to
Just
respond. You
stop
have to. No, you don't have to respond.
No.
It's just tough. I'm hoping this gets easier over time.
Or you just get a thicker skin. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Perhaps does seem like a tough thing to deal with.
Was it important in that time to have a really good support system around yourselves? Because obviously there's the two of you, but you're in the thick of it. I'm just wondering, was there other voices around, maybe your parents or your partners that were keeping you sane?
Yeah, I think definitely having each other for sure. Like, I don't know how entrepreneurs do it alone. Like, that would just feel so lonely and you'd question yourself constantly.
Yeah.
At least Ash and I, like, we would kind of reassure each other if one of us was feeling down or whatever. And then, yeah, of course, we have like an amazing family.
Yeah, our parents and family were all super supportive and always lifting us up. And my mom would come and do dishes on the weekends, and our dad would do all of our grocery shopping. And so we always had tons of support and family around.
He still does.
Who were always cheering us on. But we're also very, I would say, self-aware. Like we know where we can improve, and we're very much perfectionists. So we always want to get better. We always want to improve our processes and our recipes. So there's something to that. I think that part of it, that perfectionism and that hearing critiques and learning from them has been part of our success because we're constantly growing. But where it can get dangerous is when you start listening to people who don't have your best interests at heart, who don't understand what you're doing, who maybe your business isn't just for them. And then you can get a little lost. And I remember kind of getting to that spiral a little bit too at the beginning. So it's good to remember what you want to do, what your point of view is, and know that just because it doesn't appeal to everyone doesn't mean that a lot of people won't find it interesting or exciting. So it's hard to kind of stay out of that doubt spiral. But that's why I'm very grateful to have Jen, because we always balance each other out that way.
Yeah, there's certain things that you go through, obviously, when you start up a business that some people will deal with, some people won't very often in their lives. I understand you took on some initial investment from investors to help you at the beginning. And without shedding much detail on exactly, obviously, the specifics on it, more just around walking into a conversation like that with somebody where that's their background and it's not your background. You're giving up a piece of what you're building here for something in return. What's going through your mind when you were initially talking to investors to say about asking for help? Like, what drove you to that point? And also, what advice would you impart with to help people who are in that position where they feel like they may need to go and get some outside help?
Well, I had tried to get loans from a bank, which was impossible. I had my business plan. It was definitely nothing like what we turned into, of course, because I was playing it safe. And I had no idea what was going to happen when we opened our doors. I think I had 24 cupcakes a day and 5 cakes a week and whatever. And just myself as the only employee. So banks would look at it and be like, no. So I went to the Women's Enterprise Center. I took a course with them. It was supposed to help me get a loan. Still didn't get a loan that way. And then I started getting desperate. So I was thinking like, hey, who do I know that maybe would want to invest, who knows me really well and knows that I'm good for it and I'll work as hard as I can. You'll never not get paid back kind of thing. So I approached some family, and then this was a friend of the family. She's amazing. Her and her husband invest in certain businesses. And I had to meet him. He's tough. Like, I was stressed. But I knew my stuff, and he quizzed me and he like shot a bunch of numbers at me and I answered it and it like all worked out and I was very impressed with myself. And so was he, I guess. And they took a chance on me, and I know it was only for his wife because
she watched us grow up.
She loves us and I love her and it's because of her. So I thank her all the time.
Right. There's a connection there.
Yeah. I thank her all the time. Yeah. They were the best investors and they let us buy them out like soon after. Yeah. They were just amazing. We owe a lot. We owe everything to them. So I think like the money part, it's so hard because I don't know what I would have done if I didn't have them in my life. Like I would have figured out a way somehow, but like I signed my lease without having money to pay for it. So Yeah, I would have scraped together something. I'm sure our parents would have done something to get us started, but it's tough. It's really tough, especially if you're going from a bank. Investors, they have to believe in you. Yeah, watching a lot of like Shark Tank and stuff now, I'm like, oh, there's no way I would have gotten money if I went to anybody else. I had no idea what I was talking about. I love making cakes. You have to trust me. It's going to be good.
Yeah. Looking back now, we were like, why aren't the banks like giving you money? That's so ridiculous. And we're like, oh, right. Your business plan was not
huge
good.
risk.
You just wanted to make cakes.
Yeah.
We didn't prove any of it.
And can you share the reality of actually making money out of your business? I don't know if it took the first year till you started to break even, or 2 years or 3 years, because you can't assume that as soon as you open the doors that you're actually going to be taking in income, because that's got to cover your ingredients, your overheads, your spending. As your business starts to grow, you need more equipment and
People.
Yeah, exactly. So the reality of actually making money might come further down the line. It might just be, can I just get enough money so I can pay my rent for the first 6 to 12 months?
Yeah.
How was that journey?
I think we launched at a really good time in terms of coinciding with Instagram becoming really popular at the time. We utilized that really well. We shared we posted like 12 times a day, which is crazy.
Yeah, that is crazy.
But that's what it was back then. That was like our story. So we'd share all the flavors of that day. If we would post about Lucky Charms macarons, they'd be sold out 2 hours later. People were really using that as a way to keep up with us and all of our daily flavor shifts. And it was unlike anything in the city at the time. We got a lot of hype that way, and we kept building on it. And there was just me and Jen and maybe a couple other friends kind of helping out at that time. And we weren't scared to work hard. So we just worked really hard and didn't consider hiring anyone until about a year in to really help us. Someone who had schooling and someone who knew what they were doing. So yeah, we were lucky that we were able to be busy right off of the bat and be able to pay our bills and pay ourselves. We've always been able to do that. Luckily, these last couple of years have been a huge shift, and we're learning and growing and shifting and trying to get in more revenue streams, and COVID threw a wrench into everything. But yeah, luckily we've been able to be profitable from the first year.
Yeah, I think I see businesses starting sometimes with 6 employees. I'm like, how are you doing that?
Yeah.
That's a big investment up front. So I think the way we did it, it worked well
We were very lean and scrappy.
Yes. Yes.
But that's what carried it. I mean, those 17-hour days that you're talking about, you're doing that because well, it's not the right time to take on people. As little experience as you have, you still know some things in the sense of what you can and cannot do at that point in the business. And so that you really put that effort in, it shows.
And I think as business owners, it helped us. Like, it wasn't intentional, but now we know every little part of our business. We've done it all. We've done the dishes. We've done the grocery shopping. We've baked everything that went out the doors for years. So we know a lot about our business internally and how it runs and how it operates. I mean, obviously it's grown and it's its own thing now, but we still have those basic knowledge of what works.
Ashley, that takes a lot of work if you're talking about 10, 12 posts a day on Instagram.
Well, what did you tell me that's like 10,000?
Well, I saw the stats
posts?
that you've done about over 10,000 posts on Instagram.
Yeah, a lot of that comes from the beginning. I don't know.
But I'm just thinking about the time it takes and the effort and the styling. And were you very much focused on that side of the business of just like, all right, we've got all these cupcakes that we've baked. We need to make sure we get traffic in. Let's create some demand. Let's make sure these sell through today. I'm going to be editing them late at night on the fly. Can you just share a bit about that? Because I think sometimes there's a bit of a misunderstanding about how much time it takes to do all of that on social media as well.
I mean, I got pretty fast at styling and taking photos at that point, but I would always take an hour out of the morning rush, which was crazy because we opened at noon. So I would try and sneak out of the kitchen around 10 a.m. to start taking photos and posting for the day. And Jenna would always give me grief at the beginning. She's, what are you doing? You need to help me. We're going to be late opening. I'm like, this is important. This is important. This is how we get people in the shop. So we always made it a priority. And I was quick and I had lots of experience from graphic design and my career. I just knew how to do it. I knew how to set things up and post them. And I was just so perplexed that other bakeries online, not just in Winnipeg, but that we followed and that we saw on Instagram weren't doing that. They weren't posting their flavors. They weren't posting what was going out in the case at that time. And it was just such an easy way to get people excited.
Yeah, their photos you have such a pretty product and none of the photos out there ever did it justice. And Ash just made just took it and ran with it. And now you see it everywhere. But I honestly think Ashley was like the first one to like hold up a macaron with like pretty nails.
But it all works, right?
Yeah.
It works.
The color, the coordination, the backdrop,
Mhm.
the use of sprinkles or accessories, or all of that takes time and effort just to put together. I know you say you could do it pretty quickly, but that's probably because of years of muscle memory of learning, right?
Exactly. Yeah, I had a very good foundation.
And her eye. Yeah.
That's really cool. So then let's go forward a few years into this, because you're putting in the work, you're doing the effort. Obviously, things are growing. The business is starting to balloon a bit, and you're getting more awareness as a brand. And I know you said that you could really, at the beginning, you were only looking about a day or two ahead or a week or two ahead. But obviously, you get to a point where things mature and your mind can now start to focus and ideas start to spawn, where you're doing things like creating new products to sell. You've obviously got the book. We'll talk about that in a minute. And then, of course, you got awareness through television and things like that, magazines, stuff that find you. But what was the first thing that you created that was a non-food item that you sold under your own brand? What did you start with?
That was our liquid cotton candy. So that was our first kind of, right, Jen? That was our first kind of branch out into...
Well, I think we did like candles first. Didn't we do candles first?
I don't think so. I think it was the liquid cotton candy. I think that was like the first thing I was really excited about.
Because it was candles.
Maybe. The brown
Maybe
butter
one
one.
of the two.
It was definitely
Yeah,
candles.
okay, the candle.
Yeah.
And how many years had passed before those came about?
That was probably like 5 years ago.
Yeah, so maybe 2 or 3 years in.
Hey, sorry to interrupt, but I have to ask. You know you're about to go bake a cake, right? Or maybe you're making one right now. A really nice and expensive tall cake with some beautiful decorations and maybe some dried flowers or a large topper. What are you going to box that in when you give that to the customer? Please don't tell me you're going to use extenders and staple that to a standard flimsy box and then wrap the thing in plastic and then give that to the customer hoping for the best. I have a better idea. Why don't you try Alba tall cake boxes? They're gorgeous, strong, they come in 14 or 20 inches tall. You can easily put them together and they're perfect for your beautiful cakes. I mean, you've just spent 4 or 5 hours making this thing. Show it off in something that's going to elevate your brand to another level and then wow the customer. Check them out at www.olba.shop. That's OLBAA. All right, back to the show.
So there's a point there where you're starting to think now, okay, we can do more than just macarons and whatever else we're baking every morning, right? We can do more things than that to get to a point. So where did these ideas come from is what I'm saying, what I'm trying to figure out. And who was the originator of some of these? Or did you just sit down and think, oh, light bulb, I want to create this. We need to write a book. We need to do this at some point. How did this all come about?
I think it came from my design background just because I love packaging design. So I'm like, what can I make that makes sense that I can create from scratch? That's my favorite part, is coming up with new products and then figuring out the packaging and sourcing and how we're going to display it and how we're going to wholesale it. That's stuff that I love. All the creative visual parts, like the actual number crunching and reaching out to people. I don't love that part, but I love the development and design process. So that was us. And like, for the first thing I was really excited about was the liquid flavors. I had found a flavor company and I had gotten lots of samples and I had designed the box of it, like a kind of packaging that I'd never seen before. And it was a really fun process, like lit a fire under me to keep going that direction. So now we have over 9 flavors and we've launched our line of edible glitter and our sprinkles. So that's been really fun. I think we need to take the marketing of it more seriously because now it's just like a passion project for people who have our books or know us and will buy it. But I think there's so much more potential out there for the further reach for that. But
yeah, Ash will barely wrap up a project and be like, okay, what's next? I'm like, can we just chill for a sec?
Because I don't really worry about the marketing of it. I just like, hey, that's done.
I'm like, well, we got to sell this stuff now.
It's almost like that case of, okay, I've mastered that. I'm ready for the next task, right? I'm ready for the next project.
Yeah.
Jenna, you're not like that. You're a bit more, you can stay in it for a bit longer.
Well, for me, I guess my medium is cake, right? So I spend upwards of 30 hours sometimes on a cake and then it's out the door and then I got to do something new the next week. So I've always had that fulfillment of something new, but it's more short term, I guess. So I get it, but also, yeah, as a business, we need to focus on selling things more. But in terms of running the business and coming up and sourcing pack, I could never do that. It's not my skill set at all. Anything on the computer is just like a no for me.
I was helping her with a Google Doc the other day, and it was hilarious to watch.
I'm like,
her,
so how do I copy and paste?
It's okay. We can't
She's
all
not
be great at
kidding.
everything.
I'm not kidding. Yeah.
Can I talk to you about, obviously there's been a lot of success around like your liquid flavorants, and congratulations on the red velvet one that launched this week. Your edible glitters, the lusters, you've got absolutely rave reviews on your website. So somehow I need to get my hands on these because I'd love to put some of these lusters in cocktails and do some fun things
Yeah, they look
around
amazing in
it.
cocktails.
But can I ask you about when it's not worked and how do you deal with that and how do you pivot? Because I'm guessing a lot of this is like trial and error. And sometimes it could just be as simple as timing into the market and nothing to do with the product that you're launching, or perhaps there's a different brand that launches something that swamps yours or something. But how do you deal with that? How do you deal with something that may not have worked?
So for example, like a recent example, because things fail all the time, but a recent example is when with our Dazzle Dust, when it launched, we were all so excited because we knew what we had. We had a really great product. We had amazing ideas of how to use it and cute packaging that was different than anything else on the market. So we're like, this is going to sell itself. Like this will just get in front of people and we'll be able to, it'll just fly off the shelves. And we sold a lot of it around launch, but then it petered out. And we were like, oh yeah, I guess we have to market it. It's not the world of 2015 where we could just reach our entire audience. Right now, like we don't reach our audience anymore. We reach like a very small fraction of it. But unless you're paying for advertising, how do you reach those people and how do you stand out in a very saturated market? And how do you properly convey those messages? So we tried playing around with paid advertising for the first time ever. And this was just last summer, fall. And it was a bust. We didn't give it much of a chance, but just throwing money away
right.
to the wind and not knowing how we were going to make that money back selling $17 pots of glitter. It just didn't feel like the right course of action. But then we had an encouraging situation at a local market. I made a new display that was a bit more informational. We had display setups of like what it looked like in real life. Just those little things that you don't really think of when you're so in it. And we sold a ton at the show, which was local to Winnipeg. So we're like, okay, so we have something here. We just have to be more strategic in where we get it out. And if we don't want to do paid advertising, that's like trade shows and those kind of things. So we're going to take a step more in that direction and see where it goes. Because we've been, I don't want to say complacent, that's not who we are, but we've been very fortunate that we just work really hard and we keep our Instagram up to date. And a lot of opportunities come to us, like our book deal and things like that. So when we have to intentionally put something out and sell it, that's where we struggle if it's outside of Winnipeg. Because we have a name in Winnipeg, we have our brand, we have reputation here. But when we want to reach the rest of North America, how do we do that? So that's the stage that we're in now. And the book definitely helps. The book definitely helps people find us. But it's just a different online world than it was in 2014, 15, 16. So.
And I don't think you're alone in that. I think a lot of people have heavily relied on social media, and now a lot of companies are also thinking about how do you pivot, how do you get those products, especially something like lusters or flavorings.
Yeah.
So people really need to try them to know, oh yeah, that's really good, or they might see something on Instagram, but it needs to appear so many times on their feed and so many reminders to let them take that trigger. Oh yeah, I need to buy that.
Yeah, shopping behavior has just changed. So I think it takes 20 something times before someone will actually buy something to see it. Yeah.
We can relate to this because obviously we have a few different packaging products and we think about ones that work really well off the bat and then some which have this really long ramp before they start to gain popularity, and it can take half a year, 9 months, and then all of a sudden it's now running at a bit more of a better click. But that first, if you were to just gauge something on the first 3 months of its existence, you could be hiding, or you could be destroying something before it has a chance to fully blossom. So it's a really hard thing to play with. I mean, we feel fortunate because we're doing this with non-perishable items, which is quite nice, but there are other risks to play with. But listen, let's talk about this book, because Rachel has your book. She got it a while ago and I got to look at it. As you probably know, I'm not the baker here. She's the baker. But I still love reading a really nicely done baking book because we've got quite a few of them. And I do really enjoy how you set yours up. It's beautiful. The pictures, are amazing. I love it.
Thanks.
Ashley, I'm assuming you get most of the credit there, but
Yep.
obviously, Jenna,
All the
you had to
credit.
make the stuff that went in it, right? So honestly, just truly amazing. But give us a bit of a window into this, because the vast majority of our listeners here obviously have never written a book. So was this recipes that you just had for a while? Did you thought, okay, we've written quite a few recipes here. Maybe we should put these together into something. You said you were approached about the book deal. Had you had an idea to do this before that came along?
Yeah, it had always been my goal to do a cookbook eventually. And I had researched it, so I knew I had to create a pitch and then find an agent who would pitch to publisher. So I knew those steps, but I was intimidated and didn't quite have the time to get something together. But luckily, our publisher, our editor, reached out to us through email. And that was like the most exciting email I've ever gotten. It's like, wow. And it was Penguin Random House.
Yeah, I forwarded Ashley the email. I'm like, oh my God,
it's happening. So that was a very exciting moment. And just like a reassuring moment that like, keep working on your Instagram presence, because it does provide opportunities, even if you feel discouraged at times with it, feel like no one's seeing it. So that was amazing. And because I had a background in publication design, I was able to, I worked on magazines. I knew how to do a book layout. I worked with my friend and photographer, Brittany Mahut, on all the photos. She dedicated a lot of hours to being in the small little studio with us. A studio. It was like our front room at our old kitchen, which was like this tiny little cube of a space, but it had a wall of windows, so it worked well. We did everything natural light. I edited. I got the photos right off of Britt's camera. I edited all of them, styled all of them. I knew the process. I laid out the book before we started shooting anything and had all my ideas written on every page of the recipe to make sure it all flowed and there wasn't too much repetition per chapter and like all that stuff. So that's just like my dream job combined into one. It was our business and it was photography and it was design, and I loved it. I loved the process. It was a ton of work, and our head baker Jordan gets a ton of credit because the first book, it's all the shop recipes and they are the shop recipes. We had that initial conversation like, do we change our recipes slightly in terms of will people rip us off, or should we do it more at home version? And I was like, no, if we're going to do this, we need to put our best foot forward. Like 99% of the people who buy this book will never be able to come to our bakery. So this is Jenna Rae Cakes to someone living in Calgary or in California.
Or here in England.
Or England,
London.
exactly. Exactly. So we wanted to make sure that they were foolproof recipes, and our head baker and our kitchen team downsized all of our recipes, expanded on them, and trial and error, and we figured it out. It was a messy process. We had no clue what we were doing at first, especially in terms of testing. We learned a lot from that book. And our second book, we can't talk much about it, but it's coming out next year. And that is a lot more broad. So that is where the experimentation and development really happen. And that's where we all work together, and Jordan really knocked it out of the park, and she's a great recipe developer and knows our brand and our voice. And yeah, it was a lot of fun this time around.
That's amazing. And from start to finish, how long do you think that takes? Because you said that our next book will be out next year.
Yeah.
That's a long time, right? I'm guessing it takes a year.
It sounds like
to put
forever.
Together and
When they first pitched us, we're like, it doesn't come out for 3 years, but it flies by.
It does.
I imagine with everything else you got going on.
Yeah, it's about a 2-year process for each book. And I'm actually shooting I shot the entire second book, and we'll be shooting the third as well. So it's been a journey and a process, but it's just, I love it. I love that project so much. It's definitely my favorite.
Yeah, watching Ash work on it is like magic. It's crazy what she can do and come up with. And she's obviously honestly a publisher's dream, an editor's dream, because she pretty much hands them a book that's like done.
Yeah. I designed the whole thing too. I'm like, here you go. That's what I want it to look like.
That's amazing. I'm guessing it's not like that most of the time. You just get a piece of printout.
Yeah, if it was just me, there's no way I could ever get a book done. Like, you'd have to hire a photo stylist, you have to hire a photographer, you'd have to have so much help, and that would cost so much money, and you don't get much money at the beginning from a publisher, especially as a first-time publisher. Yeah, I don't know how people do it. They don't have an Ashley.
But meanwhile, Jenna, you are being named by Martha Stewart, no other, as one of the top 20 cake makers to follow on Instagram.
Yeah.
If you look back on your journey of cake baking, do you have to pinch yourself when someone like her name drops you and says as one of the top 20 cake makers to follow? I mean, that must be an extraordinary feeling.
Yeah, that for me is still the highlight of my career, I think. Like, it was just, I was like, oh my God, like, she knows who I am. And I don't know if it was her, but just this list, I remember seeing it and I'm like, that can't be right. Because like my idols were on there too. Like I was next to Ron Ben Israel and Maggie Austin and like these people that like I look up to and just think are royalty in the cake world. And so that was a really surreal moment and also gave me the validation, I guess, because I think as an entrepreneur, a lot of people can relate to having imposter syndrome. And especially being in a small city like Winnipeg, you don't really know what else is out there. And yeah, it was a really cool moment and just really gave me like that boost to keep going, that we were doing something right.
You still heavily involved in the cake making side of it, or cake decorating, I guess, side of it. Do you still love that?
Yeah, I still love it so much. I've always said that I just want to make cakes. That's all I want to do. And of course, when you start a business, you do everything and the thing you love to do. But now, luckily, we're at a point where I can just focus on just making those custom cakes. I do all like the really custom 5-tier wedding cakes that go out and carved cakes and things like that. But now we have an incredible cake team that helps a lot with the day-to-day cakes and some custom cakes as well. So it took me some convincing to finally hire someone to help, probably like 5 years ago. Before that, I was doing all the cakes myself for the most part, and it was just not sustainable. So it's definitely nice to focus more on what my skill set is, what I'm good at that no one else can really do, my style, and kind of focus on that part of the business instead of doing like the day-to-day cookie dough cakes and stuff like that, which I still love doing. But
Sure.
And how hard is it to hire the right people and have the right people around you? I'm sure you've had ups and downs along the way. You don't get to your size without having amazing staff and also some low points as well. Would you share any advice that you've learned along the way about creating that right culture and team?
Yeah, I think staffing is the hardest part of the business.
I heard a good quote the other day. It's hire good people and get out of their way. And I think that is really true. Like we've gotten really lucky that we made some early hires that were very great. Jordan, our head baker who runs our kitchen, has created an amazing work culture there. Aaliyah was one of our first hires and she's still on board and helps us with so many marketing and day-to-day tasks that I can't imagine without her. She's also our copywriter. And our CSR team and our general managers, like we've gotten really lucky that we have really great people who run the departments of our business, and they're all very important. And we can now look over it as a bigger picture and work on the broader strokes of the business. And I think that's really beneficial. That probably took a good 6-7 years to get to that point. It does feel much more manageable now because we have a team and we have people that we trust and we know are talented and we know are who care about the business just as much as we do. And that's a really hard thing, balancing personalities and making sure everyone feels valued and managing the profits and like making sure that we're paying people enough and making sure that we're making money on our products. And when slow times come, like the layoffs are incredibly hard. How do we avoid getting to that position again? There's always lessons to learn. And at the end of the day, we're selling pretty affordable cookies and macarons and treats. So we can't afford to ever lose sight of like those balances. It's a hard struggle because we love everyone who works for us and we want to provide the best workplace possible, but it's hard.
Yeah. And at the beginning, I remember we started just hiring friends and family. Obviously, Ash and I were always warned against going into business together because we're family and it can ruin relationships and whatever. But we never doubted that for a second. We know each other so well. We've lived together forever. There was just no shaking our relationship. So we were fine with that.
We weren't worried.
We weren't worried at all. We're like, it's fine. We got this. But I think with hiring friends, that's how we started hiring people. And that was kind of a learning experience because you love your friends. You want to give them the best work environment possible. But it becomes tricky when you're trying to be a boss as opposed to a friend. And there's always that like kind of tension. So that was tough. So I'd recommend staying away from that if you can. I know at the beginning, sometimes that's all you can do is rely on like people who love you and support you to help you out. But as you grow a little bit bigger, I think it's important to really keep that distance and that separation between friendships and employees. Like we're friends with all of our employees also, but there's like a different level. There has to be some of that separation, I think.
A lot of people could relate to that from prior to Olber and when I had a cake business. But before that, I used to work in the corporate world. And you can definitely relate to that when you're friends with someone and then they become your boss or something else happens, right?
Yeah.
Dynamics can shift and can feel a little bit awkward. So I think that's great great advice as well.
Let's talk about some of your brand collaborations, because I think I've got such an extensive list here of
Lots.
brands that you've worked from across the board, very large, and then probably some local ones that we don't even know about, right, to Winnipeg or even just to Canada. But in terms of brand collaboration, is there any struggle there with keeping true to your brand where the person that you're collaborating with or the company that you're collaborating with kind of has an idea for what they want you to do, but you can shy away from that and you can set your own path? Am I making it more difficult than it actually is, or do they just let you get on with what you want to do and work with them accordingly?
We've learned a lot from every collaboration we've done. We try and be pretty picky with who we work with, but luckily a lot of people who do approach us, it is a good fit, and they're usually looking for something edible to be made, like a recipe creation or a cake design or something that kind of fits in seamlessly to what we already do, or if it's based on entrepreneurship. So usually there's a good way that we can tie it in. I can't see us ever wanting to do a collaboration with, we've gotten approached by like Flat Tummy Tea, and we're like, well, we're a bakery. That is not worth it. Yeah, we like sugar.
Exact opposite of what we're doing.
So that has been interesting to see some offers that come in and you're just like, did you even look at what we do?
Yeah. Have you been to our website?
Yeah, have you been to our website? So that's been interesting. But I think for the most part, I think coming from marketing and advertising, we can always figure out a spin for something that makes sense. I don't know. I think so far we've been approached by people to do things that make sense for our business. And I don't think we would accept something that just was this complete offshoot of it. We do want to get more into lifestyle collaborations as well. We do want to kind of branch out a little bit more. So that might be a tricky transition and a bit of an awkward transition for some people. But I don't know. I think as long as we stay true to who we are and be genuine about things, I hope it'll all work out.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think this is the thing when like you're saying your last few words, I hope it'll all work out. It does work out when you're staying true to yourselves and your brand and what you're doing. Mm-hmm. And it just gives you access to new opportunities. I haven't even mentioned the fact that you're judges on Food Network. To be on television, surely that was not something that you ever thought was going to happen or come about. So tell us a bit about that experience.
It's like a full circle,
really.
Isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, that was crazy.
That was so cool. To be called like chef, that was a very big imposter syndrome moment because I'm like, I'm not a chef. I'm a bakery owner. I'm not a chef. So that was funny. But that was a really cool experience because we obviously grew up watching cooking and baking shows and never in our wildest dreams thought that we would be on that other side. We'd been approached in the past to be on baking shows in terms of like, build a crazy cake in 2 hours. And we're like, well, no, that's setting you up for failure. We're past that.
Yeah.
We don't really want to do that. So then a judging position did come available. And that was really cool. It was such an amazing experience to see the behind the scenes that goes into those shows. It was incredible. The amount of work that they put into it. The contestants bake in real time was just inspiring because I don't know if I could do that under that kind of pressure. It was incredible. So it was just a really humbling career moment for us to be a part of that and learn from the other judges in the room. There was a big range from like food writers to bakery owners to French trained pastry chefs. It was a huge range of talent and opinion. So it was just, can't say enough good things about it.
Yeah, I learned so much just listening to their critiques, and they just know so much. It was such a cool experience to be in the room with these people.
Did you feel anxious or nervous?
Oh my God,
before going on live TV? Oh, it's not live, it's recorded, right? But did you have like imposter syndrome or anything?
Definitely.
Like that?
Oh, absolutely. I felt like I don't even remember what I said.
Yeah. Watching back, I'm like, I have no idea what they're going to show. I can't remember a thing.
But it gets easier. I think Jen and I are not natural public speakers by any means. We're both introverted, always been shy. So to even look at ourselves like 9 years later, it's like, wow, we've come really far. We should be proud of ourselves to be on TV and push past.
We've done live news segments and
they're getting easier. So I think just practice.
You would never know. You talk about introversion and being shy. Gosh, if I was to pull up one of your latest reels on Instagram, you do not give off this impression at all, right? This is a well-produced 30-second video.
Yeah.
It may be a brand collaboration. It may be a new product. It may be just, content for the day, right? But I think what's great is you've put yourself out there and you've just let go of all those worries and fears. And it's not naivety. It's just that I'm just going to do it. and let's just see what happens. I might get one negative comment, and I understand, Jenna, you've just got to hold back, right? As much as you can.
Yeah.
It's going to happen. The bigger you get, the more people you reach. And people love to see you fail, right? People want to see, they get jealous, or they just feel like,
Yeah, it's unfortunate.
yeah, it's unfortunate to have that. So I think what you're doing is amazing in that respect. And you will be an inspiration to so many people who are listening in. Rachel, how many people have we had who've come to us and said, you've got to interview these two? You have to interview these two. If you can,
great.
please. Yeah, I think it's important to tell you that from our perspective, even all the way thousands of miles away, your brand is well known over here as too. Mm-hmm. So it's really cool to see how from Winnipeg, you've been able to branch and build and grow. And one of the last things we really need to ask you without giving us too much is, of course, where the brand goes next. What other things do you feel like you haven't yet done that you want to try and tap into?
That's
like a great question.
Growing our business, we've always been forced in directions, or sometimes we're getting these opportunities. We're just like riding the wave, and we just go where it leads us. And I think now we're at the point where we have to figure out, okay, like, where do we want to be in 5 to 10 years? Do we want an exit plan? We have to think of all these things we've never thought about before. And we have the ability to control like where we're going next. So it's tough. We're still figuring it out, but I think we have a bit more of a vision now. But yeah, it's scary.
Yeah.
But when you say exit plan, it's an interesting one, right? Because there is this thing like you think to yourself, well, how would it work without us in the business? You are the business, right?
Yeah.
You're the brand, right? And something may change down the road that allows you to venture out into other areas. But it just, at least when you look at it today, Jenna Rae Cakes is Jenna and Ashley and everyone else involved, and you remove you two from it. It's very hard to see yourselves and the brand continuing.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I want to work till I'm 80, but I don't know if people are going to want to see like wrinkly old ladies on Instagram.
We'll always be behind the scenes.
Or whatever the social media thing.
Yeah, the 10 a.m. morning rush. Come on, we got to get the videos.
Yeah, I'll never stop doing that.
Yeah.
Just before we go into the last question, one thing I would really like to know is, how do you juggle all of this mentally? There's a lot of things up in the air. You're not just juggling, you're juggling 3 businesses in Winnipeg, all the online e-commerce businesses, all the work that you do with the brands, other brands, your shows, your books, and then you've also got your home life. Is it a constant juggle in your head about what you prioritize, when and how? And do you have any tips for that? I don't suggest that you're going to say to switch off at a certain time, because I think with a business, you're always working. But have you found some things to make it a little bit easier, or just to switch off for a little bit?
For me, I think that I'm in the best phase of the business that I've been in personally in terms of work-life balance. I think we have a great team around us, because before I was also baking and trying to do this as well. And now I'm like totally on the computer. I can work. I can take photos when I need to. I can plan ahead and grow. So I always have a to-do list of 100 things, but I'm really grateful for the way that I can handle stress. There's some things that are very stressful that'll keep you up at night, but for the most part, I like being busy, and I like the thrill of like always being busy and having things to do. I like the amount of times I've actually completed my to-do list and had to think of like new tasks has been very minimal in my career, but I always get the sense of dread from that because I like staying busy and creating and staying on top of things. So I think, we have a lot of help in terms of family. Like, we have my mother-in-law who stays with our kids 2 days a week, and then we have daycare. We have to pick up our son 3:30 every day from school. So there is a bit of late night working that has to get done to make up for that. But I don't know, we're in a really good swing. My husband's super supportive. He's part of the business. He knows what's going on day to day. And that's been incredibly helpful because we lean on each other and we know what each other is going through. And we put a big priority on family. We're a big family-oriented family. We come from a family of 4 kids. We love our mom and dad, see them all the time. We've all married into families that are similar to that. So it's just a very huge family dynamic that we always keep a primary focus. And I think that helps put everything else in our lives into perspective.
Would you agree, Jenna?
Yeah, watching Ash do it all is like very inspiring. For me, I'm in a little bit of a different phase. My husband's a professional hockey player. So he's gone from September 1st to like could be May or even June some years all over the North America. We don't really know where he's going to be next year. Currently, I'm in Vegas. Just got here late last night, and I take our girls and we come visit we try to see each other every month for a couple of weeks, sometimes a bit more than that. So for me, it's been tough finding a balance with work because, like I said before, me and computers do not mix. So it's hard to do what I do away. I help as much as I can with what I can do, but I'm so grateful for Ash and Trev to really like keep things going and just giving me this time with my family. It's nice family time, and obviously it's a different lifestyle at the moment, but he'll retire in a year or two, depending. And then we can really settle into that work-life balance and as a family in Winnipeg. And I'm so excited to just be able to work every day for the rest of my life.
And Ashley, maybe you have found your calling in life. And so you would be stressed if you were in a different industry that you didn't enjoy being creative in.
Oh, totally. Yeah, definitely. I'm very lucky, and I know I'm lucky that I'm one of those kids who knew right away. And it was from like, it wasn't art. It was like menu design. I'd be at like a restaurant and be like, I like this design. I didn't even know what design meant, but I'd noticed things, and I knew I always wanted to be a graphic designer.
She was always very particular growing up, too. Very particular. Like the lines had to be straight on her like pantyhose, and like she always had to get pink, and I always got blue. We even have tattoos about that. So yeah, she's always had a great eye for everything.
Yeah, very annoying when I was a child.
You
but
were
it
great
worked out well
together.
It worked out very well for the business. Listen, it's been really great because a lot of people who will be listening to our podcast will probably come across you for the first time and then go and see what you've done and created and feel that's amazing. But the beauty of being able to talk to you is to really give a picture that this is a 10-year plus journey that you've been through with so much work and effort and time and ups and downs, financial stress, mental, physical. So a lot of that doesn't get seen, obviously, when you put up your pretty pictures and your reels and this and that. And I think we always just try to emphasize that the hard work has to be done, the grit has to be there, but the inspiration comes from that. And you two are both very inspiring to listen to and to witness, to see what you've been able to create. As little as you may have thought you did or did not know back then, it's still amazing to see how far you've come and what you've been able to do. So it's very exciting for me to watch what's next and see where you go in the next 5-10 years.
Thanks.
It's going to be really cool. It's going to be really cool. So we really appreciate it.
I'm excited too. It's a big question mark.
Well, it is. And now, speaking of question marks, we like to wrap up with a little quick fire round of some questions. So it's just the first thing that comes to mind. You don't have to explain it. We're probably going to have to start with Jenna for the first one, I think, though, because it's more baking related. And then we can bounce back and forth. The question is, Jenna, American buttercream or Swiss meringue buttercream?
Oh, that's so hard. American. But I love Swiss too for decorating. But yeah, American.
Okay. All right. Rachel, who should ask one to Jenna or Ashley?
I will do this one again to Jenna, and we can do the last two to Ashley.
Perfect. Okay.
So, Jenna, one aspect of baking you won't compromise on?
Just execution. If a cake is going out that has like one little flaw, that'll keep me up at night. I can't. Execution for sure. Sharp angles. Yeah, everything. Sorry.
All right. Cool. Okay, Ashley, how about a baking book from your bookshelf?
I really love all the Food 52 books. I think they're beautiful, and I love their kitchen gadgets that they've created over the years. So I'm going to go with that one.
Oh,
but Tara O'Brady's chocolate chip cookie recipe is the best. We make it all the time. So that is a favorite.
Oh, yeah. Make a note of that, Rachel.
I know, I will.
It's so good.
And I'm taking a note right now. And Ashley, who would you want to make your next birthday cake?
I think, Jenna, you can answer this one too after.
Yeah, you can both.
Yeah.
Jenna, of course. She always makes mine.
I'd say Maggie Austin.
You don't want me to make your wedding cake or your birthday cake for you?
Maybe you're both sick of looking at cakes for your own birthday. So,
are your kids a bit over seeing cakes and desserts and things like that, or are they still?
No, they love it. Yeah, they love
it.
They love it. Yeah.
They should come and talk to our kids because they're sort of desensitized now at this point.
Yeah. Maybe when they're older.
Thank you so much, guys. Honestly, that was really nice to talk to you. Really want to say a big thanks for taking time out of your busy schedules to get together, even in different cities. So we really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for having us.
Thank you. This was a lot of fun. It was nice to talk to you.
Thank you. And that wraps up episode 13 of My Baking Journey. If you want to know about Jenna Rae Cakes, please see the show notes. We've got links and descriptions to all their information. The beautiful website, the amazing book. It's got some brilliant recipes in it.
We are back next week with the continuation of season 2. So please do come back in for that. If you listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or any of your other favorite podcast apps, don't forget to hit that subscribe button or follow button so that you get notified as soon as a new episode comes out. And just before we go, a lovely reminder that this podcast is brought to you by Alba, the best packaging for bakers designed by a baker. Find out more at www.alba.shop. See you next time.